I had $812 in my savings account. 1 year later, I had over $19,000. My salary didn't change. My job didn't change. My apartment didn't change. Here's exactly what did. 2 years ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table staring at a pile of stuff I'd just bought from Target. Candles I didn't need. A throw pillow to replace a throw pillow that was perfectly fine. A kitchen gadget still in the box, sitting next to the last kitchen gadget I bought and never opened. I remember picking up the receipt and not even recognizing half the items on it. That's how disconnected I'd become from my own spending. My credit card statement that month, $4,100 in charges. My savings account, $812. I made $63,000 a year. I'd been making over $50,000 for 6 years straight. I had essentially nothing to show for it. No investments worth mentioning, no emergency fund that could survive a car repair, nothing. Just a closet full of things I'd stopped noticing the day after I bought them. That same week I read an article about a Japanese woman named Fumiko Chiba, who wrote a book about a century-old budgeting system called Kakeibo. What stopped me wasn't the system itself. It was one detail buried in the article. Many Japanese households had been using some version of these habits for generations. Grandmothers passing them to mothers, mothers to daughters, quietly building wealth across decades with principles so simple they felt almost insulting next to everything I'd absorbed from finance YouTube for years. And then the real gut punch. Japan's relationship with money is basically the mirror opposite of America's. In the US, we celebrate spending. New car, new house, new wardrobe. Congratulations, wealth is performed, it's visible, it's posted. In Japan, wealth is hidden. Displaying it is considered tasteless. Financial restraint isn't a sacrifice, it's a value. There's even a word for it, satsumashiai, modestly reserved, and it carries real social respect. The quieter you live, the more you're admired. In America, the quieter you live, the more people assume you're struggling. So I started applying these principles to my own life, one at a time, over the next 12 months. Same income. No side hustle. No canceling every subscription overnight. No extreme austerity month where I ate rice and beans and burned out by week 3. I just changed the operating system underneath my spending slowly, deliberately, one habit at a time. $812 to over $19,000. Same job, same salary, same apartment, different philosophy. Here are the 10 habits that did it. Some of these will feel immediately practical, the kind of thing you could start tonight. A few will mess with how you think about money on a much deeper level than any budget ever could. And honestly, those are the ones that made the biggest difference for me. Kakeibo is the foundation, and it's over 120 years old. It was invented in 1904 by Hani Motoko, Japan's first female journalist, at a time when women in Japan had almost no financial autonomy of their own. She built it as a tool for housewives to seize control of the household finances using nothing but a notebook and a pen. At the start of each month, you write 4 numbers. Income coming in, fixed expenses going out, a savings target, and what's left over to actually spend. Every single day you record what you spent and sort it into one of 4 buckets. Needs, wants, culture, which covers books, education, and experiences, and unexpected expenses. At month's end, 3 questions with no judgment attached. How much did I save? What went well? What can I improve? That's the entire system. It sounds too simple to work, which is exactly why it does. Here's what no app on your phone can replicate. The physical act of writing forces your brain to actually process each purchase, twice, once when you make it and once when you write it down. Tap a card, watch a number flash on a screen, and your brain barely registers it happened. Sit down at night and write $42 want, and your hand is telling your brain something no app ever will. That was a choice, not a necessity, and you made it consciously. Practitioners report cutting unnecessary spending by up to 35%. I didn't hit that in month 1. I hit around 22%, which on my income at the time was roughly $1,150 saved from a $3 notebook. And 47% of Americans entered 2026 with no budget at all, according to YouGov. Of those who do budget, most use apps that automate everything, which means they never build the conscious awareness that Kakeibo forces on you. The app does the work. Your brain stays asleep. Kakeibo wakes it up, and once it's awake, it doesn't go back to sleep easily. There's something else worth noticing here, which is why Kakeibo has survived over a century, while nearly every budgeting app cycles through popularity and total abandonment within 2 or 3 years. Kakeibo uses 4 categories, not the 15 or 20 categories most modern apps push on you. That simplicity isn't a limitation, it's the entire design. The moment you sort of purchase into one of 4 buckets, you're forced to make a judgment call no algorithm can make for you. Is this restaurant meal a need or a want? Is this online course culture, or a want dressed up in self-improvement language? Those questions create friction, and friction is exactly what modern spending has been engineered to eliminate. Tap to pay. One-click checkout. Auto-pay everything. Frictionless spending is precisely why the average American underestimates their own subscription costs by over $130 a month. Kakeibo reintroduces the friction on purpose. The friction is the feature. Mottainai has no direct English translation, which is part of why almost no American has ever encountered it. It's a feeling, the regret and discomfort that hits when something useful is wasted, discarded, or undervalued. In Japan, wasting a resource, whether it's food, fabric, money, or time, is treated as close to morally wrong. When someone throws out food that could have been eaten or replaces something that could have been repaired, the reaction isn't, that's their business. The reaction is Mottainai, a genuine what a waste. Compare that to America, where waste is baked directly into the consumer economy. The USDA estimates American households waste roughly 30% of the food they buy, about $2,100 per household per year, thrown straight in the trash. Americans discard about 82 pounds of textiles per person annually, per the EPA. We replace phones every 2 to 3 years when they're engineered to last 4. We throw out furniture the moment we move instead of taking it with us. When I started practicing Mottainai, I photographed everything I threw out of my fridge for a week, just to see the real number. It was genuinely shocking, roughly $40 of food a week, over $2,000 a year, gone without a second thought. I started planning meals around what I already had instead of what sounded good at the store. I froze leftovers the same day instead of promising myself I'd eat them tomorrow. I bought smaller quantities more often instead of bulk buying things that went bad before I could finish them. Within 3 months, my grocery spending dropped almost 30%. Not because I ate less, but because I wasted less. Mottainai stretches far beyond the kitchen. It changes your entire relationship with everything you own. You repair instead of replace. You finish something completely before buying its successor. You give the object a second life before you toss it. Think about kintsugi, the Japanese practice of repairing broken pottery with gold lacquer instead of throwing it away. The crack doesn't diminish the object's value. It adds to it, becomes part of its story. Apply that same lens to everything you already own, the slightly worn, the slightly outdated, the slightly imperfect thing that still does its job, before you reach for the replacement. Harahachibu comes from Confucian teaching and is practiced widely in Okinawa, which has one of the highest concentrations of centenarians on Earth. The idea is simple. Stop eating at roughly 80% full instead of 100%. Most Americans eat until they're uncomfortable. We supersize, we order appetizer, entree, and dessert, and we finish it all because we paid for it. Translated into money, Harahachibu means you never fill your life to full capacity. You leave room in your stomach, your closet, your schedule, and your budget. That remaining 20% isn't deprivation, it's margin, and margin is where wealth actually lives. In practical terms, if you take home $4,200 a month, you live as though you make $3,360. The other $840 goes straight to savings and investing, automatically, so it never even enters your spending reality. You don't touch it because, functionally, it doesn't exist. The U.S. personal savings rate sat around 4% in early 2026, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The Japanese cultural default, through practices like Harahachibu, sits closer to 20%. That 16-point gap, on a $60,000 salary, is the difference between saving $2,400 a year and saving $12,000 a year. Over 30 years at 8% average returns, That gap becomes roughly $293,000 versus $1.47 million. Same income, radically different outcome, purely from where you draw the line on enough. There's a deeper layer here too. In Okinawa, Harahachibu isn't taught as a diet hack or a savings trick, it's taught as a form of respect. Respect for the food, because you don't waste it through overconsumption. Respect for your body, because you don't burden it unnecessarily. Respect for the future, because you leave something available for tomorrow instead of consuming all of it today. That word, respect, is what's largely missing from American financial culture. We routinely sacrifice tomorrow's wealth for today's comfort. The average American carries about $6,500 in credit card debt at over 22% APR, which is borrowed comfort, financially the equivalent of eating until you're sick and calling it a good meal. A woman named Carla, who works in hospital administration in Dallas, started applying this 18 months ago. She calculated 80% of her take-home pay, about $3,600 out of $4,500, and committed to living inside that number. The remaining $900 went into a high-yield savings account and a Roth IRA. In 18 months, she saved and invested over $16,000. She told me the hard part wasn't cutting spending. It was rewiring her brain to see 80% as abundant instead of restrictive. Once that shift happened, everything else followed almost on its own. Kaizen is a word most Americans know from Toyota's manufacturing floor, but in Japanese daily life it applies to everything, including money. The principle: never attempt one dramatic overhaul, improve by roughly 1% at a time, repeatedly, over a long stretch of time. This month, dining out drops 10%, not 50%, just 10. Next month, retirement contributions go up 1%. The month after, one subscription gets canceled, then one bill gets renegotiated, then one brand name product quietly gets swapped for the generic version. This beats dramatic overhauls for a simple neurological reason. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, treats large sudden changes as threats, which is exactly why most people who slash their entire budget in January have abandoned the plan by March. The change was too big, the amygdala fought back, and willpower eventually lost. 1% improvements slip under that radar entirely. They accumulate unnoticed until one day your savings rate has gone from 4% to 18%, and you genuinely can't pinpoint the exact moment it happened. Because there wasn't one moment. There were 100 tiny ones. Ikigai roughly translates to reason for being. In the West, it's been flattened into a career optimization framework, but in Japan it's about having a purpose that structures and gives meaning to daily life. Whether that's gardening, cooking for family, teaching, or simply staying healthy into old age. Applied to money, it answers the one question every budgeting app skips entirely. What is this money actually for? Most people accumulate money with no purpose behind it, or spend money with no intention guiding it. There's no philosophy underneath the behavior, just habit and impulse. My friend Terrence defined his Ikigai as being present for his daughter's childhood, without financial stress hanging over him. Once he had that clarity, every unnecessary purchase became an obstacle standing between him and the thing he actually cared about. He didn't need willpower to stop impulse buying. He needed purpose, and once he found it, the impulse purchases didn't just feel expensive anymore. They felt beside the point entirely. Wabi-sabi is the appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. A cracked bowl that still holds soup perfectly well. A scratched wooden table that tells the story of 100 family dinners. A sweater with a small mend that reminds you how long you've actually loved it. In America, imperfection is treated as a reason to replace. A scratch on the phone screen means a new phone. Scuffed shoes mean new shoes. A slightly flattened couch cushion means it's time to browse for a new sofa. The consumer economy depends entirely on your dissatisfaction with things that still work perfectly. Wabi-sabi invites you to find satisfaction in them instead of chasing the next version. The financial impact compounds when you actually run the numbers. Americans spend roughly $9,500 a year on the categories most driven by exactly this kind of dissatisfaction: apparel, home furnishings, and consumer electronics. If Wabi-sabi reduced that spending by even 25%, just by helping you keep things longer, repair instead of replace, and appreciate what you already own. That's $2,375 a year redirected. At 8% over 25 years, that's roughly $183,000 built entirely from a philosophy of noticing what's already good enough. Osoji is the deep annual clean performed at the end of the year in Japan. Families thoroughly clean the entire home, discard what no longer serves them, and enter the new year with real mental and physical clarity. It's more intentional than spring cleaning. It's a ritual of letting go. Applied to money, Osoji becomes a once-a-year full audit of your financial life. Every subscription, every recurring charge, every insurance policy, every investment allocation, every autopay you've forgotten exists. You review it all, cancel what isn't serving you, renegotiate what can be lowered, and realign everything with your current goals rather than the goals you had 3 years ago when you first set it all up. Most people build their financial systems once and then never revisit them again. Subscriptions quietly pile up, insurance premiums creep upward, investment allocations drift away from any actual target, and annual Osoji catches every bit of it in one sitting. In my first financial Osoji, I found $318 a month in charges I'd completely forgotten about or no longer needed at all. That's $3,816 a year that had been quietly draining out of my account while I simply wasn't looking. Chokin literally means savings, but the habit it represents in Japanese financial culture is specific. You save before you spend, not whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. The typical American pattern is earn, spend, and hope something survives to be saved. The Chokin model flips the entire sequence. Earn, save immediately, spend only what remains. This isn't a semantic difference, it's structural. Parkinson's law applies to money exactly the way it applies to time. Spending expands to fill whatever income is available. Chokin breaks that law by shrinking the available income before spending ever begins. Here's the math that makes it undeniable. Marcus earns $4,800 a month after taxes. Under the typical American model, he spends throughout the month and saves whatever's left, which in practice is almost nothing. His spending expands to fill his income like gas filling a room. His savings rate hovers around 3%, roughly $144 a month, and even that only survives because his 401k schemes a small percentage before he ever sees the paycheck. Now flip it. The morning after payday, an automatic transfer moves $960, 20%, straight into a combination of his 401k, a Roth IRA, and high-yield savings. He never sees that money. His spending reality simply becomes $3,840, and his brain adjusts within about 2 months, because it turns out to be remarkably adaptable once the option to spend the money simply doesn't exist anymore. After a year, Marcus has saved and invested $11,520 versus roughly $1,728 under his old approach. Over 20 years at 8% average returns, that's approximately $570,000 versus $100,000. Same salary, same city, same life in every visible way. The only variable is the order of operations. Save first and spend second, versus spend first and hope. Japanese households have practiced this ordering for generations, and credit card debt is nearly non-existent in Japan partly because of it. Most Japanese credit cards default to auto-paying the full balance every single month, and carrying a revolving balance is culturally unusual, almost eyebrow-raising. In the US, nearly half of credit card holders carry a balance month to month, and total credit card debt crossed $1.28 trillion by the end of 2025, according to the New York Federal Reserve. The structural difference here isn't income. Japan's median household income is actually lower than America's. The difference is sequence. Save first, spend second. That's Chokin. Shinrin-yoku means forest bathing, the practice of spending quiet, contemplative time in nature as a form of genuine restoration. It costs nothing at all. The broader principle it represents is something I've come to think of as free living. The deliberate choice to build your leisure, your social life, and your recreation around activities that simply don't cost money. In the US, leisure is nearly synonymous with spending. Fun costs money, relaxation costs money, socializing costs money, A night out, a weekend trip, a movie, a shopping excursion dressed up as entertainment. The average American household spends roughly $3,000 a year on entertainment, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Japanese culture offers a genuinely different model. Walking, cooking together, reading, gardening, park visits, temple visits, tea ceremonies performed quietly at home. The richest moments of the day happen without a single transaction attached to them. When I started building my weekends around things that cost nothing, parks, cooking with friends at home, library visits, long aimless walks, my entertainment spending dropped by over 60% within 3 months. I didn't miss anything. The quality of my weekends actually improved because I stopped equating fun with consumption and started equating it with simply being present. And the last one, Hansei, is the habit that holds all 9 of the others together. It's honest self-reflection, not self-criticism, not guilt, but a sincere and rigorous look at what happened, what worked, what didn't, and what changes next time. In Japanese schools, children practice Hansei from a very young age. It's woven into the culture from the start. You don't reflect because you failed, you reflect because reflecting is how growth actually happens. Applied to finances, Hansei is the monthly review that closes the entire Kakeibo loop. You sit down with your notebook and ask 3 questions without judgment. Did I meet my savings goal? What purchases actually brought me genuine value? What would I do differently next month? This 10-minute monthly habit is arguably the most important one on this entire list because it's the mechanism by which every other habit gets sharper over time. Mottainai gets sharper because you start noticing the waste. Harahachibu gets easier because you can see exactly where you overfilled. Kaizen gets direction because you can identify the very next 1% improvement worth making. Without Hansei, the other 9 habits stay static, frozen where you first set them. With it, they compound. And that word, compound, is really where I want to leave this. Every single habit in this list runs on the exact same principle as compound interest. Small, consistent inputs, repeated over a long stretch of time, producing results that are wildly disproportionate to the actual effort involved. A $3 notebook and 10 minutes a day don't sound like a wealth-building strategy. Neither does leaving 20% of your plate empty, or finding beauty in a scratched table instead of replacing it. But stacked on top of each other, practice day after day, month after month, year after year, these small, almost invisible behaviors produce something that no income level can produce entirely on its own.